You'll give me a son, I'll give you power, the female alien warlord told the broken human. The twin suns of Harrow's prime burned high over the fractured plains, casting sharp light across the wreckage of forgotten battles. Callum Rhodes wiped a sleeve across his brow, squinting at the faulty atmospheric stabilizer he had been patching for 2 days straight. The hum of worn-out machinery filled the air, along with the faint metallic taste of recycled oxygen. He twisted the final bolt into place and stepped back, muttering to himself. That should hold for now. Callum was an atmospheric systems technician, part engineer, part survivalist, and part miracle worker. One of the last humans stranded on this hostile world after the evacuation ship stopped coming. What was meant to be a short-term contract to maintain the mining outpost had turned into a slow exile when the Antari Civil War tore the planet apart. The spaceport was destroyed in the first week of fighting, and with it, any hope of returning home. Now, 4 years later, the surviving humans clung to life in a ramshackle settlement built from salvaged parts and stubborn will. He sat on an overturned crate, took a drink from his canteen, and stared out across the valley. The ground shimmered in the heat, stretching toward the jagged mountains that marked the border of Antari territory. Out there, the blue-skinned giants fought among themselves for dominance, while the humans hid in their metal shells, praying not to be noticed. Callum ran a hand through his dark hair, wondering again how long before the filters failed, or the generators ran out. He was good at fixing things, but not at fixing the world. Human, a voice said, deep and resonant. He froze. The word carried power, authority, and the sound of something not human. Slowly he turned. Standing at the edge of the light was a towering figure. 7 feet of power and grace, her skin a brilliant shade of bright blue that caught the sunlight like polished stone. Her armor was sleek black metal trimmed with silver filigree, adorned with battle medallions and a long crimson sash. Her white hair was cropped short, except for a single braid that fell across one shoulder. Her eyes were pale, almost luminescent, with a sharpness that made Callum's throat tighten. "You are Callum Rhodes," she said. It wasn't a question. Her voice was steady and commanding, the tone of someone long accustomed to obedience. "The one who repairs the human machines." "That's me," he managed. His fingers itched toward the wrench beside him out of habit, though he doubted it would do much good. She took a step closer, the ground vibrating faintly beneath her armored boots. "I am General Vera of the Northern Reach," she said. "Warlord of Clan Tashir, heir to the fallen banners of the Old North." She inclined her head just enough to acknowledge his wariness. "I have come with an offer." Callum blinked. "An offer?" "You'll give me a son," she said bluntly, "and I'll give you power." For a moment, the wind itself seemed to stop. Callum stared at her, certain he had misheard. I'm sorry, what?" "My claim to leadership must be solidified," Vera continued, her gaze unwavering. "My late consort left no heir. My enemies gather, waiting for weakness. I require a mate to secure my rule. And you, human, are strong, clever, and unaligned." He laughed once, more out of disbelief than amusement. "You can't be serious." Her expression didn't change. "I am not in the habit of jesting. Your people struggle here. You lack proper defenses, food, water. I can provide these, in exchange for an alliance through blood. My scientists have confirmed genetic compatibility. The offspring would be strong." Callum set his canteen down slowly, searching for words. The Antari were fierce, proud, and warlike. The idea that one of their generals wanted him, of all people, sounded like a trap. "You don't even know me, Bob," he said. "And even if you did, this can't just be about genetics." "It is about survival," she replied. Her eyes caught the sunlight again, and for a fleeting moment, he saw something behind the hardness, something like exhaustion. "You will consider it." She turned to leave, her armor catching the light in ripples of blue and silver. "I will return tomorrow for your answer." When she was gone, Callum sat in a stunned silence. The sound of the wind returned, carrying the dry hiss of dust across the valley. He stared after her until the shimmer of her armor vanished beyond the ridge. Whatever that had been, a proposition, a threat, or both, it was the strangest conversation of his life. Sleep didn't come easily that night. The image of the alien warlord haunted him. Her pale eyes, her calm certainty, her words. He needed answers. By dawn, he was walking toward the trading post at the center of the settlement. The place was half buried in sand, its metal siding scorched by years of heat and wind. Inside, the familiar smell of oil and burnt synth coffee hung in the air. Behind the counter, Rourke, the settlement's unofficial leader and gossip hub, raised an eyebrow as Callum walked in. "Morning, Rhodes. You look like someone just offered to buy your soul." Callum managed a tired smile. "Close. I think a warlord just proposed to me." Rourke stopped mid-pour, coffee spilling onto the counter. "Come again?" Tall, bright blue, armor like a walking fortress, called herself General Vera. Rourke's expression darkened. "Oh, hell. That one. You sure you didn't piss her off?" "She said she wanted an alliance." Through me, the older man let out a low whistle and leaned forward. "Son, if she asked, it wasn't a request. Vera's the real deal, took command after her consort died 6 months back. Half her clan thinks she shouldn't lead alone. The other half is waiting for someone to challenge her." Callum frowned. "And marrying a human helps her how?" "Politics," Rourke said, lowering his voice. "If she takes another Antari mate, it throws off the balance of power, gives her rival Kalen an excuse to move against her. But if she takes an outsider, someone who can't claim her armies or threaten her bloodlines, that makes her untouchable." Callum exhaled slowly. "So I'd be a political shield." "A very valuable one," Rourke said. "And if she meant what she said about power, it might lift more than just you. A deal with her could mean food, medicine, protection for all of us." Before Callum could respond, another voice joined the conversation. May, one of the outpost's few scientists, stepped in from the adjoining room with a datapad under her arm. "You're talking about Vera?" "Word travels fast," Callum muttered. "She doesn't choose lightly," May said. "Antari females are incredibly selective. When they propose a mating bond, it's usually political, but it always has a biological component too. If she chose you, she sees something in you." "Like what?" "I'm a guy who fixes machines with scrap wire." "Exactly," May replied. "Adaptability, resilience. That's what fascinates them about humans. They see it as a kind of strength their own species has lost." Rourke smirked. "Maybe she just likes your face." "Thanks, that helps," Callum muttered, rubbing his temples. "So what happens if I say no?" May exchanged a look with Rourke. "Then she finds another way to secure her power, and you'll wish she hadn't come to you first." The words hung in the air like smoke. Callum sighed. "Guess I should at least hear her out." "Guess you should," Rourke said, sliding him a chipped mug of coffee. "Just remember, whatever she wants, it's never just about you." When Vera returned the next day, the settlement fell silent. Every human outside froze at the sight of her entourage. 4 Antari warriors mounted on 6-legged beasts that kicked up clouds of dust as they approached. Vera dismounted with liquid grace, her armor gleaming like a living storm. Callum waited by his workshop, pulse hammering in his ears. "Have you decided?" she asked, her voice carrying across the open air. He hesitated. "I have questions." "Ask." "Why me?" Vera's gaze held his. "You endure. You create from ruin. You lead without demanding followers. My people respect strength of action, not bloodline. You have that strength," Kalim swallowed hard. There was no manipulation in her tone, just fact. "And if I agree? You will come to my fortress in the Valley of Kareth," she said. "You will be my consort and ally. In return, I will ensure the survival of your people. Together, we will forge a new future, a child who carries both our legacies." Something in her voice stirred him, a conviction that went beyond politics. Against all logic, he believed her. "Then I accept," he said quietly. For a moment, the faintest trace of a smile touched her lips. "You have chosen well, human." She extended a hand, pulling him up onto her mount behind her. The creature rumbled like an engine as they rode away from the settlement, twin suns glinting off their armor. Callum looked back only once at the outpost that had been his prison and his home. Ahead lay the unknown and the bright blue future that waited for him. The journey to the Valley of Kareth lasted half a day under the relentless heat of the twin suns. The terrain changed as they rode, from the scorched plains of rust-red dust to a region where strange blue moss grew along the rocks, glowing faintly in the shadows. The closer they drew to Vera's fortress, the more signs of civilization emerged. Watchtowers cut from obsidian stone, walls reinforced with energy barriers that shimmered in faint cobalt hues, and wide roads lined with banners bearing the sigil of a stylized serpent coiled around a blade. Her people stood guard along the ramparts, tall and imposing, their bright blue skin and pale armor glinting in the light. They watched in silence as the human arrived among them. When they entered the fortress, Callum's senses were overwhelmed. The air here was cooler, the atmosphere regulated by advanced systems he recognized immediately. The structure itself was a blend of alien craftsmanship and brutal practicality, arched corridors of polished metal, wide halls adorned with glowing runes. Antari warriors moved through the space with quiet precision, nodding to Vera but barely concealing their curiosity toward her new companion. She dismounted first, her movements fluid and confident, and turned to him with a faint tilt of her head. "This will be your home now," she said, "the fortress of the Northern Reach." He climbed down awkwardly, still unaccustomed to the alien mount. "You have an impressive setup," he said, looking around. "Better than our tin huts back in the outpost." "My people do not survive by luck," she replied simply. "We endure by design." She gestured for him to follow as they passed through a wide entryway guarded by two silent soldiers. The corridors glowed faintly from embedded crystals that pulsed with soft blue light. Callum noticed how the air smelled cleaner here, less metallic, more filtered. Somewhere deep below, he could hear the hum of massive generators. It was an engineer's dream and a soldier's fortress combined. Vera stopped before a pair of massive doors carved from a single slab of black stone. With a subtle gesture, the doors opened. "These chambers will be yours," she said. Inside was a spacious room, Spartan but comfortable, with a sleeping platform, storage alcoves, and a small work area equipped with Antari tools. A side chamber held something that nearly made Callum stop breathing, a functioning water shower. "This is more than I expected," he admitted. "You are not a prisoner," Vera said. "You are my consort and ally. It is important you appear as such." He turned toward her, uncertain whether to laugh or bow. "And that means?" "You will join me for the evening meal," she said. "You will be presented before the clan council as my chosen partner. They must see strength in you, not hesitation." Callum nodded, though the knot in his stomach tightened. "Right. No pressure." When she left, he explored the chamber, running a hand along the smooth walls. The technology here fascinated him. Interfaces that responded to gestures, silent vents that maintained perfect air quality. Even the water flow system operated with layered redundancy. It was a marvel of engineering, and yet the people who built it lived like warriors in a medieval stronghold. He stripped off his dust-caked clothes and stepped into the shower. Warm, clean water poured over him, and for the first time in years, he felt truly human again. That evening, the great hall was filled with light and the low hum of Antari voices. Warriors sat along long tables carved from crystalline stone. The ceiling arched high above, where banners fluttered gently from unseen air currents. At the head of the hall stood a raised platform with two seats, one clearly meant for Vera, the other empty. When Callum entered, conversation stilled. 100 pairs of pale, luminescent eyes turned toward him. Vera stood at her place, radiant beneath the hall's cold blue light. Her armor had been replaced with ceremonial robes woven with metallic threads, their pattern reflecting the serpent's sigil. When she saw him, her expression softened slightly, a look that lasted barely a heartbeat before her mask of authority returned. She beckoned him forward. "People of the Northern Reach," she began, her voice filling the hall without need of amplification. "You know me. You know the blood I have shed for this land and the oaths I have kept. You also know that our enemies watch for any sign of weakness. To secure our future, I have chosen an alliance that none can predict, a union that will strengthen us in ways our foes cannot comprehend." She turned toward him. "This is Callum Rhodes of Earth, engineer, survivor, and human. He will stand beside me as consort and ally. His kind adapts where others perish. His mind will serve where even warriors cannot. Together we will forge a new legacy for our people." The hall erupted in murmurs. Some of the Antari looked outraged, others merely stunned. A few seemed intrigued, One voice rose above the noise, a tall male warrior near the front. A human? You would mix our blood with an off-worlder? What of our honor, our traditions? Veyra's gaze cut through the room like a blade. Honor means nothing if it dies with the past. Survival demands evolution. This human has earned my respect. He will earn yours. The challenger bowed his head and retreated. Callum caught Veyra's glance and nodded, trying to look composed. He sat beside her as the meal began. The food was unfamiliar, steamed roots that glowed faintly and meat that shifted color when sliced. But he ate what was offered. The taste was strange but not unpleasant. Across the hall, Antari eyes kept returning to him, watching, measuring. When the council session began after the meal, Veyra motioned for him to remain beside her. 12 advisors took seats at the lower platform. One of them, an older male with angular markings along his jaw, spoke first. General, the presence of this human complicates our alliances. Already Kalen questions your judgment. Kalen has always questioned what he does not control, Veyra said. He mistakes tradition for strength. And what of this one? The elder asked, gesturing to Callum. He is untested, unproven. Callum stood, sensing the weight of the room against him. Then test me, he said. His voice carried farther than he expected. The hall quieted. Where I come from, we don't survive because of who our parents were. We survive because we fix what's broken. You want proof? Let me see your water systems, your defense grids. I'll show you what I can do. A murmur ran through the council. Veyra's expression didn't change, but her eyes gleamed faintly with approval. So it shall be, she said. You will oversee the restoration of our outer defenses. Dren will accompany you. The name belonged to her trusted lieutenant, a towering figure with braided white hair and cold eyes. Dren inclined his head stiffly. As you command, General. The meeting ended, but the stares followed him long after. As they left the hall, Callum exhaled slowly. I think half of them wanted to kill me. Half, Veyra said, amusement flickering at the corner of her mouth. That is progress. She paused by the corridor leading to their chambers. You spoke well. You remind them of something they forget, that strength is not always born of war. He met her gaze. And what about you? Do you still think this is only politics? For a moment, her composure slipped. Her eyes softened, and she stepped closer until he could feel the faint heat radiating from her body. Politics began it, she said. What it becomes will depend on us. Then she turned away, her voice returning to command. Rest, Callum Rhodes. Tomorrow you begin your work. Prove yourself to them and to me. When she was gone, Callum leaned against the wall, heart pounding, mind reeling with the magnitude of what lay ahead. He had agreed to something far larger than himself, an alliance that could change the fate of two peoples. As the lights of the fortress dimmed for Nikachikol, he found himself staring out at the valley of Kareth, where the twin moons of Pharaoh's prime hung like pale eyes in the sky, and wondered if he had just saved his kind or doomed them. Callum woke before dawn to the rhythmic sound of the fortress stirring. The Antari never truly slept as humans did. Their lives were dictated by cycles of rest and vigilance. From his quarters, he could hear the echo of boots on stone, the faint hum of energy cores being activated, and the low rumble of the creatures they rode into battle. When he stepped outside, the air was cool and sharp, carrying the smell of ozone and metal. The suns had not yet risen, but the horizon shimmered faintly with their approach. Dren was waiting for him at the base of the stairway, his towering form motionless as a statue. The Antari lieutenant regarded Callum with the wary eyes of a soldier forced to respect someone he didn't understand. You rise early for a human, he said. Callum tightened the straps of his tool harness. I've learned that things break faster when you sleep in. Dren's expression didn't change, but Callum could tell the alien appreciated the answer. Together they crossed the fortress courtyard, where warriors drilled in formation and engineers worked on half-repaired defense towers. The outer wall stretched like a rib cage across the horizon, each segment humming faintly with a blue energy field. Beyond it, the valley descended into darkness, a vast plain scattered with the remains of old battleships. You'll start here, Dren said, gesturing toward a cluster of damaged panels along the eastern perimeter. The alarms fail every third rotation. No cause found Callum crouched beside the nearest panel, and ran his scanner across the surface. The readings danced on the display, energy fluctuations, grounding faults, inconsistencies that didn't match natural wear. "Someone's been tampering with these," he said. Dren frowned. "Impossible. None would dare." "Then you've got a ghost," Callum muttered, prying open the casing. Inside, several of the fiber lines had been deliberately cut and reconnected. A crude bypass. "Sabotage," he said, standing. "Someone wants this wall to fail." Dren's hand moved instinctively to his weapon, his eyes narrowing. "Kalen's sympathizers," he said quietly. The general suspected such treachery. Callum sealed the panel and began rerouting the circuits. "I can make it harder to tamper with, but if they're determined, it won't stop them forever. What you need is a secondary alert system, something that warns you before a failure happens." "Can your human technology do this?" Dren asked. Callum smiled faintly. "It can, if I build it from scrap." For the next several hours, he worked without pause, pulling apart old Antari components and merging them with the scavenged tech from the human settlement. He used the principles of human engineering, simple redundancies, physical overrides, and manual triggers, to design a fail-safe that even the most sophisticated saboteur would overlook. Dren watched in silence, occasionally asking questions about the tools or methods. By midday, the suns burned overhead, casting long shadows across the valley. When Callum finished, he connected the final line and stepped back. The indicator light flickered, then glowed steady blue. "Done," he said. Dren tested the system, triggering a false alarm. A soft chime echoed through the air, followed by a low mechanical hum that rippled across the wall. "It works," the lieutenant said, almost surprised. "You truly are different." "Difference what keeps me alive," Callum said. He looked up at the shimmering barrier. "And maybe you too." When they returned to the inner fortress, the mood had changed. The corridors were filled with tension, warriors moving with purpose. Callum caught fragments of hushed conversations. Kalen's name whispered, the words challenge and betrayal murmured under breath. In the great hall, Vera stood before a cluster of advisors, her presence as commanding as ever. Her bright blue skin reflected the glow of the hall's light as she turned to face them. "You've discovered something," she said. Callum nodded. "Sabotage on the east wall. Someone's been disabling your alarm network. Dren thinks it's Kalen's faction." Her jaw tightened. It was only a matter of time. She dismissed the advisors with a gesture. When the room cleared, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You understand what this means?" "That your enemies are inside these walls," Callum said. She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You fix what's broken. I must do the same. But where you use tools, I use fear." "Fear doesn't last forever," he said. "People adapt. Find a way to make them believe in you instead." Her gaze flicked toward him, sharp and assessing. "You speak like a leader, not an engineer. Maybe fixing things teaches you about more than metal." The faintest hint of a smile curved her lips, though her eyes remained cold. "Your methods are unusual, Callum Rhodes. But perhaps that is what I need." She turned, her long braids swinging against her shoulder. "Walk with me." They moved through the fortress corridors, past armories and training chambers, until they emerged onto a balcony overlooking the valley. Below them, the repaired defense wall shimmered like a band of light. The twin suns were setting now, casting the entire world in shades of violet and gold. "When I was a child," Vera said softly, "the old clans ruled this land through blood and terror. My father taught me that mercy was weakness, that to lead, you must never show doubt." She turned her gaze toward him. "But doubt builds in silence. Even now I feel it creeping among my people. They fear what they do not understand." "You mean me?" Callum said. "You, us, the future," she replied. "Kalen preaches that our blood must remain pure, that our traditions make us strong, but he is wrong. Stagnation is death." Callum leaned on the railing, watching the pale lights flicker along the valley floor. "You're trying to change a culture that's built on conquest. It's not going to be easy. Nothing worth keeping ever is." Her voice softened slightly. "You remind me that not all strength comes from force." For a while they stood in silence. The sound of wind sweeping through the valley filled the space between them. Finally, she spoke again. "Tomorrow I will convene the council. I will name you officially as my consort and engineer of the Northern Reach. The others will resist. You must be ready." "Ready for what?" he asked. "For them to test you," she said simply. "In Antari tradition, respect is not given, it is taken. You will face their questions, perhaps more. Stand your ground." He nodded, though his pulse quickened. "I've stood before worse." "Have you?" she asked quietly. "Kalen's warriors kill challengers without hesitation." "Then I'll just have to make sure I don't give them the chance." That earned him another almost smile. "You continue to surprise me, human." "Get used to it," he said. Her eyes lingered on him a moment longer before she turned to leave. "Rest well. The next cycle will decide much." Callum stayed on the balcony after she left, watching the last traces of daylight vanish beyond the jagged ridges. The stars came out one by one, brilliant and cold. Somewhere in the distance, lightning flickered in the clouds, illuminating the ruins of ships that had fallen centuries ago. He could feel the weight of what he had stepped into. It was more than politics now, more than survival. Veyra's people were watching him, waiting to see if he was worthy of standing beside their warlord. And beneath it all, he sensed the deeper truth. Someone within those walls was waiting for him to fail. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction. The morning came cold and silent, a rare stillness settling over the fortress as the twin suns crept above the horizon. The great council of the Northern Reach was to convene, and every corridor seemed to echo with tension. Callum dressed in the garments Veyra had provided, a sleeveless tunic reinforced with light armor plating and a belt carrying the tools of his trade, symbols of both his human practicality and new status. He studied his reflection in the metal wall, wondering if anyone, least of all himself, truly believed he belonged here. Dren appeared at his door, expression unreadable. "The general awaits you," he said. Together they walked through the halls that had become Callum's second world, past guards who eyed him with curiosity and distrust. At the entrance to the council chamber, the heavy doors loomed, carved with scenes of ancient Antari wars, serpents entwined with warriors, battles beneath alien suns, a legacy of conquest and pride. Inside, the chamber was already filled. 12 council members sat in a semicircle before Veyra's throne, their skins shimmering in varying shades of bright blue under the pale glow of the overhead crystals. The air hummed faintly with restrained hostility. Veyra stood at the center, radiant in ceremonial armor that caught the light like liquid steel. When Callum entered, every eye turned to him. Whispers passed like currents through the chamber. He walked forward until he stood beside her throne. Veyra raised a hand, and silence fell. "The council will hear my decree," she said, her voice carrying across the stone floor. "I have chosen my consort, my partner, my ally in the rebuilding of our future. Callum Rhodes of Earth will serve as my engineer and advisor, and through our union, I claim a new path for our people." The reaction was immediate. Several councillors rose, voices overlapping in outrage. One, tall and broad, with a scar splitting his cheek, stepped forward. "You would taint our blood with an alien?" he spat. "This human has no right to stand among us." Veyra's eyes hardened. "He stands because I command it." "Your command does not erase weakness?" another councillor said, her tone cold. "Kalen warned us this would come, that your grief has blinded you to reason." At the mention of Kalen's name, a ripple passed through the room. Callum watched Veyra closely, but her composure did not falter. "Kalen speaks of strength but hides behind fear," she said. "He fears change. He fears progress. And so he spreads poison among us." She gestured toward Callum. "This human has accomplished more in one rotation than Kalen has in a year of posturing. Our defenses hold because of his mind. Our walls stand because of his hands." The first counselor sneered. "Let him prove it then." The room quieted. Veyra's gaze locked onto the speaker. "You propose a test?" "I propose truth," the warrior said. "If this human claims to strengthen us, let him demonstrate it before the eyes of the council. Let him face a challenge, not of words, but of will." A murmur of approval rippled through the chamber. Callum could feel every heartbeat in the room, the weight of alien judgment pressing down on him. Vera looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Do you accept this challenge?" He hesitated for only a moment. "Yes." The counselor stepped forward, his presence filling the space. "I am Theric, commander of the Western Guard. You say you build strength with your tools and your mind. Let us see if those hands can endure the trials of a warrior." The room shifted as the council approved. Guards moved aside, clearing the center floor. The challenge would be physical, not to the death, but to submission. Callum stripped off the heavier pieces of his armor and stepped into the circle. Vera's gaze met his for an instant, and though she said nothing, he could read the warning in her eyes. Do not underestimate them. Tharic removed his chest plate and drew a short, curved blade. Callum had no weapon, only his reflexes and what Dren had taught him about Antari anatomy. The match began with a low, resonant tone from one of the council guards. Tharic lunged with the speed of a predator, blade flashing. Callum barely dodged, the edge grazing his shoulder. He stumbled, caught his balance, and circled. Tharic came again, all muscle and precision, each strike calculated to end quickly. Callum ducked low, rolling beneath a swing, and used Tharic's momentum to shove him off balance. The council murmured, surprised. The Antari recovered fast, swinging the flat of his blade against Callum's ribs. Pain exploded through him, but he forced himself upright. He remembered what Dren had told him. Antari power came from the upper body, but their center of gravity was higher than a human's. Use that. He feigned retreat, then sidestepped at the last second as Tharic charged. Callum's arm locked around the Antari's, twisting. The larger warrior lost footing, crashing to one knee. Callum grabbed the discarded training staff from the edge of the circle and swept it against Tharic's legs. The commander fell, blade skittering away. For a heartbeat, silence held the room. Callum stepped back, breathing hard, the staff still in his grip. Tharic rose slowly, pride warring with pain. Then, to everyone's surprise, he bowed. "The human fights with thought, not fury," he said. "Perhaps there is strength in that." The tension in the chamber broke like ice. Several counselors exchanged uncertain looks. Vera stood, her expression fierce and triumphant. "You have your proof," she said. "My consort has earned his place." The council session ended, but Callum knew this was only the beginning. He followed Vera out into the corridor, his shoulder throbbing from the impact. "You didn't tell me I'd be fighting one of your officers," he said. "Would you have prepared differently?" she asked. "I would have stretched first." Her laugh was low, almost genuine. "You did well. They will think twice before calling you weak again." "And Kalen?" he asked. Her expression darkened. "He will not stop here. His influence grows among the border garrisons. Soon he will make his move." They walked in silence for a while until she stopped at the archway overlooking the valley. "What you did today mattered," she said softly. They saw not a human, but a warrior who earns respect. "That will make them question everything they have been taught. That was the easy part," he said. "Keeping them loyal will be harder." "That is why you are here," she replied. "To build what I cannot. Machines, alliances, trust." Her gaze lingered on him, and perhaps something more. He met her eyes, and the distance between them seemed to narrow for a moment before she turned away. "You should rest," she said. "Tomorrow, we begin fortifying the Western Ridge. If Kalen means to test our strength, we will be ready." Callum watched her go, the sound of her boots fading into the shadows. He exhaled, muscles aching, mind racing. Somewhere beyond the fortress walls, he could almost feel the storm of conflict gathering. And he knew that whatever came next, the fragile trust between them would be tested just as severely as the walls he repaired. The following days passed in a blur of heat, metal, and constant vigilance. Callum worked with tireless focus, his hands and mind consumed by the task of reinforcing the Western Ridge. The fortress was built for war, but its systems had suffered years of neglect. Generators flickered with unstable energy, signatures, defensive towers operated at half capacity, and the communication network was riddled with blind spots. He spent every waking hour crawling through conduits and vents, replacing cracked cables and welding new joints, surrounded by the watchful stares of Antari warriors who didn't know whether to respect or despise him. Dren accompanied him everywhere, silent and efficient, his presence both guard and reminder. Though they rarely spoke, Kellum had come to recognize a subtle change in the lieutenant's demeanor. Less suspicion, more curiosity. Once, while Callum calibrated the targeting arrays, Dren finally asked, "On your world, were you a warrior?" Callum shook his head, eyes still on the readout. "Not even close. I fixed things, machines, engines, the kind of stuff no one else bothered with. And yet you fight with purpose," Dren said. Callum paused, then replied quietly, "Where I come from, fixing what's broken sometimes means fighting for it." The Antari said nothing, but a faint nod betrayed understanding. By the time dusk fell, the ridge defenses were humming at full power for the first time in years. The twin suns had dipped below the horizon, painting the valley in bands of violet light. Callum climbed to the top of one of the towers and surveyed his work. Energy shields shimmered like translucent domes along the valley's perimeter, and new watch sensors pulsed in steady rhythm. For the first time since his arrival, he felt something resembling pride. Below, Vera and her commanders were gathered around a tactical display, reviewing the new defense grid. He descended the ladder to join them, wiping sweat and grime from his hands. "It's done," he said. "Every tower now links to an independent relay. Even if one system fails, the rest can reroute automatically." No more blind spots. Vera studied the holographic display, the faintest glimmer of satisfaction in her eyes. "Impressive. You've done in 4 rotations what my engineers could not." "Your engineers were using Antari logic," Kellum said. "Too rigid. Sometimes you have to break symmetry to make something stronger." Dren made a noise that could have been amusement. "He speaks like a philosopher." "He speaks like someone who's survived collapse," Vera corrected softly. Before Callum could respond, a sudden tremor rippled through the ground. The holographic map flickered, alarms flaring red. One of the energy barriers along the northern flank had gone dark. Warriors scrambled, voices rising. Vera's expression hardened. "Report!" A guard sprinted in, his armor scorched. "Explosion at the north wall. The barrier generator has been destroyed." Dren was already moving. "Kalen's doing," he growled. Vera turned to Callum. "Can the system hold?" He shook his head. "If that generator's gone, the power balance across the grid will collapse in under an hour." "Then we move now," she said. "You and Dren with me." They mounted the ridge beasts waiting in the courtyard and thundered toward the smoke rising over the northern cliffs. The night air was thick with the smell of burned metal. As they approached, Callum could see the damage. One of the generator cores had been overloaded from within. Not a bombardment, sabotage. Pieces of bright blue armor lay scattered among the debris. Vera dismounted, kneeling beside one of the fallen. "My warriors," she said, her tone flat but deadly. "They were executed, not killed in the blast." Callum crouched beside the wreckage. Whoever did this wanted the generator offline without drawing too much attention. A timed overload, triggered remotely. Dren scanned the perimeter with his weapon drawn. Kalen's forces must have infiltrated from the western pass. It's the only route hidden from our scouts. "Then we seal it," Kellum said. "I can reroute power from the southern array to contain the breach temporarily, but we'll need to defend this section manually." Vera's eyes met his. "Do it." Dren organized the watch. Callum moved fast, hands slick with sweat as he patched a temporary bypass between 2 power conduits. Sparks flew, lighting the dark. He worked from memory, recalculating flow patterns, redirecting voltage away from the unstable node. Within minutes, the hum of energy returned, weak but steady. "That'll buy us some time," he said. Vera nodded. "Time is all we need." In the distance, faint lights glimmered along the horizon. Movement, deliberate and organized. The scouts confirmed it moments later. "Kalen's army," Dren said grimly. "He's making his move tonight." Vera straightened, her presence commanding even in the half-light. "Then he will learn that betrayal earns only fire." She turned to Callum. "Can you trigger the defensive turrets remotely?" "Yes, but the control systems aren't centralized." "I'd have to be at the command post go," she said. "You know these machines better than anyone." "Dren and I will hold the line." He hesitated. "I can't leave you out here with them closing in." "You can and you will," she said sharply. "I need my systems operational." "That is how you fight." Callum met her eyes for a heartbeat, then nodded. "Keep the link open." I'll get those turrets back online. He sprinted back toward the fortress, the comms crackling with distant explosions as the first exchange of fire began. Inside the command post, the air was thick with static and heat. Panels sparked where stray rounds had struck the outer walls. Callum dove to the console, bypassing security locks as alarms screamed overhead. One by one, the defensive turrets came online, rotating toward the ridge where Vera's forces were engaged. Through the feed, he could see the battle unfold. Antari soldiers clashing in a storm of plasma fire, bright blue figures moving like shadows against the glowing haze. Vera fought at the front, her blade cutting arcs of silver light. Dren was beside her, his strength devastating. Callum rerouted more power to the turrets, pushing the generators to their limits. The hum deepened, and the valley erupted in bursts of defensive fire, striking the advancing enemy lines. The console lights flared, warning of an imminent overload. "Come on," he muttered. "Hold together, damn you." The entire fortress shuddered as another explosion rocked the ground. Static filled the comm. "Vera!" he shouted. Her voice came through the distortion, breathless but steady. "We hold, Callum. Kalen's vanguard is breaking. Your weapons tear through them like stormfire." "I'm sending auxiliary drones to reinforce your position," he said. "Stay low. The turrets will adjust to enemy signatures." "Understood," she said. The line went quiet for a moment, then her voice returned, softer. "Do not let them reach the fortress. No matter what happens to us, the channel cut out." Callum kept working, coordinating the automated defenses, watching as Kalen's forces faltered under the combined fire. But something in the readings made his stomach twist. The energy spikes from the southern generators were climbing too fast. He realized what Kalen's plan truly was. The sabotage wasn't meant to destroy the northern barrier. It was meant to overload the southern grid once power was rerouted. If that happened, the entire fortress would erupt from within. He hit the comm again. "Vera, listen to me. He's baiting us. He wants the reroute to trigger a chain reaction." There was no answer. "Dren, anyone!" Only static replied. Callum cursed and ran from the command post, grabbing his toolkit. He sprinted down the main corridor toward the southern power core. The walls trembled with each distant detonation. Smoke stung his eyes as he reached the chamber, a massive room lined with humming pylons and cables thick as tree trunks. The central core pulsed erratically, arcs of energy crawling up its surface. Someone had tampered with the control rods. Kalen's agents had already been here. He dove toward the console, ripping out the sabotaged module. The heat was unbearable, sweat pouring down his back. The warning indicators flared crimson. "You're not taking this place," he muttered. With shaking hands, he bypassed the damaged circuit and rerouted the charge to the auxiliary capacitor. The core roared, shaking the entire structure. The blast wave knocked him backward, but the overload stabilized. The lights flickered, then steadied. The fortress held. The power grid equalized, and the system began redirecting energy to the turrets again. Callum lay on the floor, chest heaving, surrounded by the smell of ozone and smoke. Then Vera's voice came through the comm, sharp and alive. "Callum, report!" He sat up, coughing, still breathing. "You?" "Victorious," she said. "Kalen retreats into the wastelands. The battle is ours for now." He leaned back, relief flooding him. "Then we've got a fortress to rebuild." Her voice softened. "You have done more than that, human. You have given us a reason to believe again." The line went silent except for the hum of the power core, and for the first time Callum allowed himself to rest, knowing the real war had only begun. Weeks passed since Kalen's failed assault, but the aftermath left scars both seen and unseen. The fortress walls bore blackened streaks where fire had struck, and the fields below were littered with wreckage from both sides. The northern reach had survived, yet victory came with unease. Kalen had escaped, his influence festering in the borderlands like an infection. Vera ruled with renewed authority, but the shadows in the council chamber whispered of vengeance. Callum spent the following days rebuilding what had been broken. The southern power core required constant recalibration, and the new defenses needed balancing to prevent another overload. He worked long hours in silence, the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. Though he had proven himself in battle, the memory of Vera's words echoed in his mind. Fear does not last forever. Change, he realized, was far more dangerous than war. It crept slowly, reshaping hearts and loyalties. He was in the workshop one morning when the door opened and she entered without warning. Vera wore no armor today, only a simple dark tunic and gloves streaked with dust. Her bright blue skin glowed faintly in the workshop's half-light, and her expression carried the exhaustion of a leader who had spent too many nights awake. "The council is restless," she said. "Kalen's defeat has not silenced them. Some claim we have strayed too far from the old ways." Callum didn't look up from the console he was repairing. "That's what happens when you try to move forward. The ones behind you call it betrayal." "And you?" she asked. "Do you believe I am betraying my people?" He met her eyes. "No, I think you're saving them from themselves." She studied him for a long moment, her voice quieter when she spoke again. "The healer confirmed something yesterday. The child grows strong." Callum froze, his breath catching. He set down the tool in his hand. "You're certain?" "Beyond doubt," she said. "Hybrid in form, stable in development. The first of his kind." He stepped closer, his heart pounding. "Then it's real. Everything we fought for, it worked." A faint, rare smile touched her lips. "It seems your human resilience runs deeper than science predicted." For a while, neither spoke. The air hummed softly around them, the faint pulse of machinery mirroring the rhythm of their thoughts. Finally, she said, "This child changes everything. For me, for the Reach, for you. There are those who will see him as a weapon and others as a threat." Callum shook his head. "He's neither. He's proof we don't have to keep repeating the same mistakes." "You sound like one of my philosophers," she said, but her voice lacked mockery. He smiled faintly. "Guess I've been spending too much time in your fortress." "Perhaps not enough," she replied, and for the first time in weeks, he heard warmth in her tone. "The ceremony of renewal is in 2 nights. The clans will gather. They must see the child as a symbol of unity, not rebellion." "And Kalen? He will come," she said. "He cannot resist the chance to challenge me publicly." Callum frowned. "Then we'll be ready." 2 nights later, the fortress came alive with sound and color. The great hall was transformed, its walls draped with banners of silver and indigo. The air shimmered with the faint energy of the defense grid powered at full strength for the first time since the war began. Antari warriors and human envoys alike filled the space, their uneasy coexistence tempered by shared survival. At the center, Vera stood before the assembly, radiant beneath the ceremonial light. Callum took his place beside her, his presence silent but deliberate. When she spoke, her voice carried like a storm rolling through stone. "Our world has burned for generations," she said. "We fought over bloodlines and pride, and in doing so, we nearly destroyed ourselves. But today we stand on the edge of something new. The child I carry is not a weakness. He is the bridge between 2 peoples who have suffered too long apart. Through him, we will build not from dominance, but from strength." Shared murmurs spread through the hall. Some nodded with cautious approval. Others looked away, unwilling to accept it. And then, from the far end of the chamber, a familiar voice rang out. "Beautiful words, sister," Kalen said, stepping forward, flanked by armed followers. His armor was battle-scarred, his face marked by bitterness. But bridges burn easily when built on lies. The crowd tensed. Dren and his guards moved instantly, forming a barrier between Kalen and the dais. Vera's gaze hardened. "You returned to my hall in defiance of law." "Law?" Kalen laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "You call this mockery law? You would give our heritage to an off-worlder who soils our blood." Callum felt the room shift, hostility simmering like static. He stepped forward. "You're not afraid of me, Kalen. You're afraid your people will realize they don't need you anymore." Kalen's eyes flashed. "You think you understand us, human? You think your machines and your clever words make you one of us?" He drew his blade, its edge gleaming in the blue light. "Let us see whose strength endures." The council erupted in protest, but Vera raised her hand. "By the ancient codes I accept," she said. Callum turned to her sharply. "You can't. He leaves me no choice," she said. "To refuse would shatter what we've built." She stepped into the circle forming around them, drawing her own weapon. Kalen sneered. "You fight while carrying a half-blooded child?" You shame our ancestors. I honor them, she said, by ensuring their descendants still have a future. The duel began with a clash that sent sparks scattering across the floor. Kalen fought with fury, his strikes heavy and relentless. Vera countered each blow with precision, her movements measured, her power coiled like a spring. Callum watched from the edge, every muscle taut. The sound of metal against metal filled the hall, echoing like thunder. Kalen pressed harder, sensing advantage. You've grown soft, sister, he hissed. You let this human make you weak. She parried a downward strike and drove her elbow into his chest, forcing him back. He made me stronger, she said. He taught me there are battles worth more than conquest. Kalen roared and lunged again, their blades locking. For a heartbeat, the two siblings stood locked in struggle, strength against strength, before Vira twisted her wrist and disarmed him with a strike so clean it silenced the hall. His blade clattered to the floor. She stepped back, her weapon still raised. Yield, she commanded. Kalen's breathing was ragged, fury blazing in his eyes. Never, he spat. He lunged again, barehanded, but Vera sidestepped, sweeping his legs from under him and pinning him to the floor with her blade at his throat. This ends now, she said quietly. Not with your death, but with your exile. You sought to destroy what could have saved us. You have no place here. She turned to the council. By my right as warlord, Kalen of the Old Blood is banished from the northern reach. Let his name fade from our songs. Silence filled the chamber. Then slowly, one by one, the council members rose and struck their fists to their chests in assent. Kalen's expression twisted with hate, but he said nothing as he was dragged from the hall. When the doors closed behind him, the tension that had gripped the room began to dissolve. Vera lowered her weapon, her shoulders sagging for the first time. Callum crossed to her, steadying her as the hall erupted into muted conversation. You ended it, he said softly. You gave them something to follow again. She looked up at him, eyes shining with exhaustion and something deeper. Not me, she said. Us. Later that night, after the celebrations had quieted and the hall lay empty, they stood together on the balcony overlooking the valley. The twin moons bathed the world in pale silver light. Below, the fortress glowed like a living heart amid the dark plains. Vera rested a hand on her abdomen, where the faint pulse of new life stirred. You once told me fear doesn't last forever, she said. You were right. It changes into something else. Callum's hand brushed against hers. Hope? She smiled, the expression soft but fierce. Maybe that's the human word for it. They stood in silence, the wind whispering across the stone. Above them, the stars burned bright and cold, and for the first time since he had crashed on this world, Callum felt not like a stranger, but like someone who belonged. The war was over, the future uncertain, but together they had done what neither species could alone. They had built something worth protecting, and somewhere beyond the horizon, under the alien sky, the first dawn of peace began to rise.